With great power comes great responsibility, said Spider-Man's uncle. This is Socrates. Socrates questioned moral beliefs in Athens. He was sentenced to suicide. This is Jeanne d'Arc. Jeanne challenged the authority of institutions, the French monarchy and the church. She was fired, like literally fired. This is Che Guevara. Che pushed his revolutionary ideas on the agenda of the Bolivian peasantry. He was executed by shooting. And finally, this is our dear Ned Stark. Ned disobeyed the king's decision to conceal royal bastardy. He lost his head in season 1 of Game of Thrones. What all these 4 honorable people taught me was one lesson, that if you want to make a great impact, then without great power comes great kick in the... And here's my personal story. I'm systems architect. My world is software projects. And for many years, I thought that systems architecture is about making technical decisions. I've read plenty of books on the subject, and I believed that I was a good architect. The reality, however, had another opinion. One day, I was sitting in a project meeting. This project was always on fire. And my project lead, Peter, a pragmatic, tall guy, decided to take technical shortcuts to meet the deadline next Friday for the 3rd time in a row. For any systems architect, those technical shortcuts, they feel like actual cuts. It's a physical pain. So I started arguing, let's invest more effort and time into building a sustainable architecture that will keep us afloat in the long run. My project lead, Peter, listened to me, nodded a couple of times, smiled, then looked me in the eyes and said cold-bloodedly, "Not now." As you can expect, this now never came. Not in a month, not in a year, and after 2 years, the project collapsed due to all those technical shortcuts. And our lead developer, Daniel, who created a lot of quick and dirty fixes, working overtime, he got a burnout. This was the moment when I realized that my profession, systems architecture, is not only a technical discipline, but first and foremost, a political one. As an architect, I understood that if I want to change the world around me, I need to change its architecture of power. So what are these enigmatic architectures of power? When we think about power, we often imagine someone with authority making a decision. For example, our government issuing a new law. Decisions are the visible layer of power. But before something can be discussed and decided upon, it must be included in the agenda. Agendas are prioritized lists of topics. Every government session has an agenda. And the way items are presented or not presented on this agenda shapes how decisions will be made or ignored. Agendas are curated by the machinery of institutions. The German government is obviously an institution. All institutions have recurring practices and rituals, such as government sessions. Institutions are enabled by the shared beliefs. For example, the shared belief the Germans are a nation enables the establishment of the German state. But in their turn, institutions, through their rituals and practices, they reinforce our beliefs. The German state reinforces our belief the Germans are a nation. This is how institutions persist. Beliefs are invisible stocks of power. And every arrow in this diagram represents the flow of power. However, power doesn't only flow from the invisible beliefs to the visible decisions, it also flows from the visible back to the invisible. Because decisions set in motion actions, and actions trigger events. A major factory closing, laying off thousands of workers, is an event. Events are neutral. They get their meaning by being interpreted through narratives. Narratives can explain events and can justify or challenge decisions. For example, our government's foreign trade policies encouraged outsourcing and killed domestic jobs. This is a narrative. Over time, narratives can even shape or shift beliefs. For example, the same narrative being repeated over and over again can cultivate a new narrative that our government cannot safeguard our economy and protect workers. Narratives can even push new topics straight to the agendas. For example, something you all are familiar with, let's introduce tariff deals. This model illustrates how power flows through social systems. I call this model the power loop. And for any social system, be it your country or your organization, the established beliefs, institutions, agenda-setting bodies, decision-making authorities, recurring event patterns, and popular narratives are all embody the architecture of power for the given social system. And now, armed with this knowledge, we will travel back in space and time and go into my meeting room to explore its architecture of power. My project lead has made a decision to take technical shortcuts. His decision was guided by the agenda to meet the deadline next Friday. My architectural concerns were not on this agenda. The institution that ran our meeting was our project organization with established rituals such as review meetings and planning meetings like the one we are currently attending. And the dominant belief in our project was success equals speed. This explains the leadership's decisions. Events such as someone working till late night, creating quick and dirty fixes, they occurred regularly. But they were romanticized through narratives such as Daniel, our lead developer, is a hero. This was the architecture of power in my project. Now, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts, because we will use the power loop model not only to explore the architecture of power, but also to change this. And before we begin, let's assess our chances here. Beliefs, we cannot impose them. Socrates tried, didn't work well for him. Institutions, we cannot challenge them directly. Joan d'Arc tried and got a burnout at the age of 19. Agendas, we are not entitled to set them. Che Guevara wrote a couple of bullet points for the agenda and left with a couple of bullets. And finally, decisions. We don't have authority to make them, and if disobeying them would be a good idea, then our dear Ned Stark would make it into season 2 of Game of Thrones. So our final resort is presenting events and creating narratives. This is precisely what we will do. We can pick up those late night shifts that lead to the creation of quick and dirty fixes and speak up about them, highlighting the risks for our long-term speed. This narrative aligns with the dominant belief that success equals speed. And we will use this narrative to extend the agenda by new concerns, for concerns like overtime work and technical debt issues. This new frame will enable us to reframe the narrative away from heroic stories to disruptive hero practices. And the final step is institutional embedding. We can push metrics for our new concerns, metrics like the number of overtime hours, the number of technical debt issues, into the rituals of our organization, such as review meetings and planning meetings. Over time, this will enable us to shift the narrative, to shift the belief away from success equals speed to success equals sustainability. My project lead, Peter, would still retain his formal authority, but the architecture of power would have changed, and we all would live now in a healthier work environment. Power to society is what energy is to physics. Without power, we cannot accomplish anything that requires other people. By using the power loop model, you can begin to notice the hidden layers of power around you, layers rooted in agendas, institutions, and even beliefs. But I also invite you to use this model not only to explore power, but actually to change it. And the most efficient way to do so is to speak up. To speak up not to complain or to raise awareness, but to speak up with a clear intent to extend agendas and shift beliefs. Power has no morality. It is neither good nor evil. Actually, power is good in good hands. So don't forget, with great power comes great responsibility.